Welcome to the Piano Guys Piano Store CSP Clavinova comparison video. Now presumably, if you're about to watch this video, you watched the Piano Guys video that compared CVP Clavinovas from CLP Clavinovas from CSP Clavinovas, and you're now trying to decide maybe which CSP you're most interested in. That's the purpose of this video. I actually have the spec chart that Yamaha Japan created that has every little detail and every little upgrade on this piece of paper. But what a boring thing it would be if I were to sit here and read it off. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to bring this to life for you and talk about what's important and what is not necessarily important as we decide which CSP you're going to get. Before I get started, I should explain where I'm standing. I'm in front of the Yamaha Piano Continuum. Yamaha is the largest musical instrument manufacturer in the world. 1 out of 4 musical instruments are made by Yamaha, but these are all the different types of pianos Yamaha makes. From fully acoustic, you add a little bit of technology and you can play an acoustic piano with headphones and add speakers and get other sounds. You cross this center line here and that's a digital piano. There are no strings in that piano and yet it's got a real acoustic piano action. It's called the Avant Grand. And then you've got a fully digital instrument. Digital piano with a digital action. That's called a Clavinova. Clav means keyboard, Nova means new. You're looking at the CSP Clavinova. I'm going to go through the entire CSP line. Let's get started by introducing you to all the different models. And this is a treat for me because I'm not used to being able to have the full complement of CSPs all in one location. On the far left here, we've got the CSP 255, 255. We've got the 275 right here, CSP 295, and the grand version of the 295, the CSP 295 GP. The other thing that's sort of fun is I'm seeing a lot of different cabinet finishes here. This is what we call matte black. It used to be years ago rosewood. It was sort of a more wood tone that was very popular. Matte black is one of the best-selling finishes at this point of a Clavinova, although I'm really partial to the polished ebony here on the 275. This is the most traditional, gorgeous-looking, glossy cabinet you normally find on a fine grand piano. Same thing as on the CFX right behind it. This is back to matte black, but we've never had an upright version of a digital piano in recent years, so this is really nice to see. And then also the grand version, a miniature grand. Some people call it a miniature grand, and this is actually polished white. I always noted that once Steve Jobs introduced an iPod in white, suddenly you started seeing lots of other things pop up in white, including pianos, after that introduction. So technically you can either get matte black or polished ebony, or you can get matte white or polished white. So 4 different choices for you. Check with the Piano Guys Piano Store which finishes are available for which models. Here in the United States, all Clavinovas come with a bench. The 255 and the 275 come with the BC 108, nice little bench here. And then the 2 top models, the 2 295s and the 295 GP, come with a larger bench that opens for music storage. And it is a matching bench depending upon what finish you selected. All the music racks are a little bit different on all the models, except for the 255 and the 275 have a little wider than normal for about 4 pages of sheet music. The 295 actually is adjustable in and out if you want to get in a little closer, depending upon your eyesight. And then this has a folding music rack here. What's unique, however, is all of these have the music clips in them. If you put in a pretty thick book, this is 200 and some pages, you put it up here and look what happens. Well, that's what the music clips are for. Bring up the music clip, it'll hold the music open so that you don't have to worry about it closing on you. All of the instruments have that. In addition, you should know that when we get to connecting the iPad, after all, this is the first Clavinova in history that's operated completely from an iPad. Located behind these music racks is the USB connection port. It's actually USB-C on all of the Clavinova CSPs. What's great about it is it connects the iPad to the CSP and it charges the iPad at the same time. Pretty cool. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's look a little bit more at the visuals. What about the keyboard cover? Keyboard covers are important because you don't want to walk up to the Clavinova and have dust on the keys. So we've got pull-out dust covers or keyboard covers on the first two models. Over here we actually have a slow close fallboard, more like an upright piano, which is pretty cool. If you let go of it, look at that, it closes nice and slow. Look at that. And then also on the Grand version, a very high-end sliding keyboard cover here that looks really nice, both open and closed. Now all of these have a little different form factor, and one of them of course is the height of the piano. And the height of the piano, even in a Clavinova, is a bit of a reflection of what the sound is going to be like. An acoustic piano, the larger the piano, the greater the dynamic range because the scale of the piano is larger. With a digital piano such as a CSP, there's still a connection because a larger cabinet allows for bigger speakers, more speakers, bigger amplifiers for a greater dynamic range. So the 255 and the 275 are exactly the same height, but we'll get to the fact that they have different sound systems. We'll get to that. If we go to the 295, nice upright form factor here, reminds me of a piano that I grew up playing, and the speakers in here are absolutely amazing. We'll get to that. And then here we've got, of course, the miniature Grand. Its sound system is located up here with this beautiful wood top, and it's got a two-level authentic lid prop depending upon how much sound you want. Just like an acoustic piano, you put that lid down, you're muting the strings and the soundboard. Here you're muting the speakers. Nice connection there. So let's talk about the sound system. Yamaha is in the business of creating home theater systems. I believe they did it so they could create better sound systems for their musical instruments, which is their main business. When you go to the 275, you double the number of speakers and you triple the amplifiers going into that system. So right there, there's a big difference in the sound between these two, even though they look very similar on the outside. When you go up to the 295, you add two additional speakers, very unusual speakers, that actually add a speaker cloth in the front because the top speakers, both the tweeters and the mid-range, are bi-directional. Shoots out the front, and I can feel that speaker cloth here, out the back, and I can feel the speaker grate in the back, and the mid-range is sort of a 360 sound. You know what's really cool about this is starting here, you can stand here and listen to someone playing that piano and stand behind the Clavinova, and you're going to hear basically the same sound because this is the first Clavinova in the CSP line that has speakers in the back. It's all about non-directional sound. Coming out of the back, it might hit the wall and come to your ears. Just like an acoustic piano, you never know where that sound's coming from. Not knowing exactly where the sound's coming out of a digital piano is a really beautiful illusion. And this piano has 80 more watts than the 275 because of the speakers. And the 295 GP also has 6 speakers, but they're arranged in a little different configuration than the regular 295. Some sounds coming up here being deflected by the lid, just like an acoustic piano. Some sounds coming from below, including a subwoofer. This thing even has what they call a twisted flare port for its subwoofer. It spins the sound into the room so that that bass sound gets into a room more efficiently, almost like throwing a football with a little spin on it to give it a little bit of direction, as opposed to not twisting that flare port and it just sort of hits the wall of sound and then gets very localized. One of the benefits of having Yamaha designing speaker systems. And finally, the two top models have what we call spruce cone speakers. You know how a speaker has usually a paper cone around it? Well, Yamaha uses the leftover wood pieces from creating their acoustic soundboards and makes those paper cones out of actual spruce. Very clever and very green. So what have we talked about so far? How the instruments vary in terms of how they look. Then we talked about how they vary in terms of tone based upon the speaker system, the sound system, the number of speakers, and the amplifiers. Now let's talk about the differences of the models based upon the action and how the piano feels. First of all, the key tops themselves all have synthetic ebony and ivory key tops. As you put your hands on top of these, they feel sort of porous in nature. They don't feel plasticky because it is a porous material. It's called synthetic ebony and ivory. If you're sweating even a little bit with plastic keys, that's not very comfortable. These are very comfortable to play, and they all have the same substrate on these keys. And all of these pianos simulate escapement, where if you're learning to play the piano or you're an advanced piano player, if you push a key down nice and softly, there's a point where you feel this little extra, for lack of a better word, a little bump, just like an acoustic piano. Not being a piano technician, but playing one on TV, escapement is the jack slipping off the knuckle in an acoustic piano action. If you're playing softly, you expect to feel that, and the Clavinova does reproduce it. Now let's get into some of the differences. The keys themselves, what's on the inside? On an acoustic piano, there's wood on the inside of those keys. On a Clavinova, well, in the entry-level model here, if you look on the side here, you don't feel or see any wood. That's because the inside of the key itself is hollow. We don't fill it with plastic, it's just hollow. Going up just one level, Yamaha introduces real wood on the inside of the keys. Now you may say, why is that important? Well, we talked about the sound system. If you lay into two low A's on the piano, you feel the vibrations of that speaker system through the solid wood into your fingers. It's not quite the same if the key is hollow. Just like an acoustic piano, you want to feel the vibrations of the strings and the soundboard through your fingers. It also changes the inertia of the keys. So obviously this has wood on the inside of the key, as does the Grand. Acoustic pianos have different size hammers in them. If you've ever opened up an upright piano or looked into a Grand, the very top strings are sort of thin, and the hammers that are striking those strings are sort of small. But as you go down, large hammers are playing those larger strings in the bass because they've got to hit those big, fat, copper wound strings. Now, all these models have different size hammers. However, the 255 and the 275 have what we call graded hammers. They're grouped together. The first certain number are a certain weight. Then as you go farther down, a little heavier hammers here, and I can feel it when I wiggle my hands up and down. I'm feeling more and more resistance. If I go all the way down here, just like an acoustic piano, that resistance a little more because I'm moving heavier hammers. However, on the top two models, the 295 GP and the 295, we have what we call linear graded hammers. Different size hammers for every single key, starting from the top all the way down. Really for the discerning pianist. And finally, the top two models, 295s, 295 GP, have a very important feature that's important for musicians who want to be able to control the piano at low volumes. There are things called counterweights. There are counterweights in these keys that are not available in the 255 and the 275. What are they? Well, remember I mentioned those really large hammers? To balance out the larger hammers in the low end, they add weights, sort of like a seesaw. Let's say you have a 200-pound person here and a 100-pound person here. If you add 100 pounds to the 100-pound person, then it's a lot easier to control that seesaw. Said quite simply, counterweights allow musicians, pianists, to play the piano softly with more control. If we're going to talk about the feel of the piano, we have to talk about how the pedals feel on our feet. All CSP Clavinovas, of course, have three pedals: sustain, true sostenuto, and a soft pedal, and they can be assigned to do different things. However, the top two models have what is called GP response. If I were to go to that CFX over there now and push down the damper pedal, while I'm pushing down that damper pedal, all of the dampers are being raised, and if I let go of the pedal, then they'll come back down. When you first start pushing it over there, it's a little easy to move until it finally gets those dampers, and then you feel more weight on your foot. And then once they're raised, there's a little bit of play there. The point is, it's variable resistance, and that's the best way to describe the right pedal. It's a variable resistance simulating actually lifting dampers up and down on an acoustic piano. Now this is sort of fun compared to, say, a CLP Clavinova or a CVP Clavinova, where I talk about the control panel. And, oh, where's the control panel? That's the whole point of a CSP. This is the first Clavinova in history that's operated 100% with an iOS device or an Android device, basically a smart device. So I can't really talk about the control panel unless you want to know that, let's say you forgot your iPad. Can you still play the Clavinova? The answer is yes. There is one function button down here, and you can actually call up sounds, voices, and songs by hitting the keys. You do still have switches. For example, this will switch it to a Bosendorfer sound by holding down the function, or if I press this button down, it switches it to an electric piano or something else. The point is I can switch it with the control panel that is in the form of the keys on the instrument, but a CSP is designed to be operated with an iPad or an Android device. Now, somewhat surprisingly, after we've gone through all of these differences so far, differences in cabinets, differences in how it looks, sound system, even in the action, the actual functionality of the instruments themselves is very similar. They all have basically the same features. Where you see differences, however, is in the number of voices and the number of styles. Let me get my list out here and just point out the differences in the number of voices. The 255 and the 275 both have 772 voices each. That's a lot of voices, say, compared to a CLP. And the higher two models have 100 more voices each. In terms of styles, 495 styles, accompaniment styles in the 255 and the 275, and then 525 styles in the 295 and the 295 GP. And how about the songs? The songs are actually very similar among all the models. You've got the 50 greats, which are built into the app itself, actual MIDI performances that you can play along with this book built into the instrument. It's also got 303 lessons, Bergmuller and Hannon, all built right into the instrument itself. And then 100 contemporary songs that are really excellently programmed by Yamaha engineers and musicians. So that's a total of 453 built-in songs. Now, the real star of the show is the Smart Pianist app, because it's what the CSP does. There are so many things that it does. Do you know that you can control the entire instrument with that Smart Pianist app? Yamaha took a unique approach. Rather than developing a separate app for everything, they created one app that works with all the series. It was so successful that that Smart Pianist app now works in a limited fashion on everything else that Yamaha makes. But the CSP is still the star because it's got the styles built in, all the songs built in, even those guide lamps and stream lights. My career at Yamaha was based upon creating follow lights and kooky karaoke software for these series. And there are some functions in Smart Pianist that will blow your mind. Do you know that you can now scan a piece of paper of music, a PDF, put it into Smart Pianist. Through artificial intelligence, it'll evaluate it and create an accompaniment for you to play along with. Or you could sit and listen to it play it just by looking at the dots on a page. Smart Pianist does that. It also has a function that will evaluate the audio in your smart device, create a chord chart so you can play along with the music that you've been walking around with in your pocket your whole life. It's crazy what Smart Pianist does. I'm not covering that here because this talks about the differences among the models. Be sure you go to the Piano Guys Piano Store webpage that talks specifically about Smart Pianist and its features. And finally, two bonus features that I want you to know about from the Piano Guys Piano Store. I recently finished a project where the Piano Guys asked me to outline all of the little secrets of a CSP Clavinova after playing these for so many years. We created 28 hidden CSP Clavinova secrets that you didn't know existed and put those out in a format with a video. So once you purchase your CSP from the Piano Guys, we unlock those videos and you can go to town with some of these fun and unusual things. I always love looking at that kind of stuff for my iPhone and different things. It's sort of eye-opening when you say, I had no idea it could do that. And on a personal note, my good friend Philip Kevrin was commissioned by the Piano Guys to create the Piano Guys for Easy Piano. You know, Hal Leonard distributes all the Piano Guys sheet music, and a lot of it's pretty advanced and hard to play. This is early intermediate, and I don't care if you're an advanced player, it is such a pleasure to sit down and play these. John Schmidt sat down and played these and even gave Philip a call and said, you captured the flavor of a Piano Guys arrangement with a minimal number of notes. Just a joy to play. So be sure you ask the Piano Guys Piano Store about this exclusive book. Well, I hope this helped you decide which CSP that you might be most interested in. If you have any additional questions, or you want to go back and look at the CVP and CLPs, check out those videos or call 866-75-PIANO. Give the Piano Guys a call. Thanks for watching.